Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leslie Samay, Director of Professional Development at Great Valley Publishing Company, publishers of For the Record magazine. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Human Leadership in the Age of AI, What's Next for HIM? Before we get started, I just have two quick points of housekeeping. For questions related to the content of today's presentation, you can use the Q&A box in the lower menu of Zoom. To engage in conversations with the panelists and your fellow attendees, you can use, or to seek technological help from me if you need it, you can use the chat box. Don't worry, we'll be checking both boxes throughout the session, so if you get one mixed up with the other, we've got it all monitored. Second point of housekeeping, this webinar is being recorded, and rest assured we'll keep you posted on when and where it will be posted so you can access it again after the show concludes. And now I'm happy to turn it over to Andrew Herkert from Elevate Medical Solutions, sponsor of today's event. Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Leslie, and good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Andrew Herkert, and I run business development here at Elevate Medical Solutions. It is our privilege to host such an accomplished group of leaders and decision makers for today's session. For those of you who may not know us, Elevate is a medical coding and revenue cycle management HIM company. We are proud to be 100% US based, and we never miss a chance to sing the praises of our incredible team. Our leadership team, which we consider our greatest strength, brings an average of 20 to 30 years of industry experience in their respective roles. Elevate also hosts monthly educational webinars, which are 100% free to attend. And in these CEU webinars, participants are eligible for both AHIMA and AAPC continuing education units. These sessions are incredibly popular, averaging more than 2,000 attendees per month, and we encourage you to invite your coding teams to join. In fact, our next one is happening tomorrow, and you can find registration links and more information on our website at www.elevatecoding.com. We believe ongoing education benefits the entire industry, and we're proud to make it accessible to all. We've got an important conversation ahead of us about the future of healthcare leadership in the age of AI, and we couldn't ask for a better moderator to guide us. Bob Rapp leads the AI Center of Excellence at General Motors, and before joining GM, Bob worked at GE Healthcare, where he deployed the first global healthcare artificial intelligence machine learning data lake to create a learning factory for all of GE Healthcare, I should say. He also partnered with Amazon Web Services and other providers to launch the largest healthcare-specific media library in the world. So, with that being said, I am thrilled to hand things over to our moderator, Bob Rapp. Bob, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. It's really good to be here. And Andrew is a dear friend of mine. He asked me to come join. I know a fair bit about artificial intelligence. I don't know that much about the medical topics here today, so I'm glad we have such great experts. Just a reminder, we're here to help, and our opinions are our own. They represent our personal opinions, not necessarily those of our company. So let's get to know our panelists, take some time to learn about their thoughts and feelings, the good, the bad, the ugly about artificial intelligence. So if I could start, I'm going to start with Jill and just go around the table here. So 10 seconds, intro your name, your role, why you're an expert. Tell the audience your high-level point of view about AI, both maybe the good, the bad, but the impact on HIM. And then talk about what you're going to be kind of your point of view for the conversation. So let's start with you, Jill.
Alrighty, hi there. My name is Jill Budek. I have over 30 years of experience in healthcare finance at this point, embarrassingly, but here I am. My current role is the Director of Medical Practice Revenue Cycle for a very large health system in New York and Connecticut. The expertise that I bring is that, the 30 years of experience, my AI take is that it's exciting. I think it's going to do a lot of great things for the industry, but it always needs the human touch. So that's my take, and I'll pass it along.
How about Casey next?
Hi, good morning, afternoon, everyone. I'm Kitara Casey Clayton, and I'm the Coding and Integrity Oversight Manager for Forest Health. My background in health information management and passion for responsible innovation placed me at the intersection of people, processes, and technology, and I am excited to be here today to talk about that. And I just feel like AI is transforming the way we work, but here's a secret. Technology alone doesn't change organizations. People do. The real question isn't how smart can AI get, but how human will we allow it to be? In my work leading HIM quality and denials teams, I've seen that the future of AI depends on leaders who can connect people, processes, and technology. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. And I just want to leave everyone with this. Remember this: garbage in, garbage out. AI's ability to transform organizations depends on how well we balance innovation with compliance, our patient safety, and accuracy.
Thank you, Casey. And how about you, Beth?
Thanks, Bob. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to be here. My name is Beth Cost. I serve as the Chief Compliance Officer and the Senior VP at Wellstar Health System here in Georgia. I think I'm here today for a couple of reasons. One, I've been responsible for HIM coding and CDI for my entire career. Currently still responsible for that, but also have responsibility for cybersecurity and privacy, which is where my AI role comes in here at Wellstar. I'm responsible for our AI policies and helping with governance around AI. So excited to hear my fellow speakers here today and their experiences there. My high-level point of view on AI, Bob, is really that using AI for good could make healthcare spectacular if we do it the right way and for all the right reasons. And the impact on HIM, I've always thought of HIM professionals as the guardians of people's health information. And nowhere else in my career has that been more important than with the prevalence of AI in healthcare today. So thank you.
Excellent. And now, Rochelle.
Hi, everyone. Rochelle Buell. I'm the Senior Director of Coding CDI and HIM here at UW Health. We've actually installed AI in our organization in several areas of coding and definitely have improved our charge lake. In addition to improving our documentation to support billing, coders still have plenty of work, but AI has definitely helped some of our exponential growth in volumes. One thing we were talking about in our practice session, we've had some cost savings of over $1 million using AI tool. But don't underestimate the resources needed to define the measure, know the metrics, continuously monitor the output of the engine. The tool is just that, a tool, and laser focus must be dedicated to training human coders with new skill sets to prepare for even further growth in AI. And, whether that's auditing, documentation improvement efforts, or simply cross-training in a new specialty, it is clear the time is now to build those project plans to ensure we are nimble and ready to meet the future demands.
Great. And next, Julie.
Hello, my name is Julie Larson. I am the Enterprise Director of Academic and Community Partnerships in the mid-revenue cycle space at Advocate Health. Yes, that's a long title. But at the core, my team works closely with the students in their final term, guiding them through their practicum experiences. So we also engage with professional associations to support both emerging and those seasoned professionals. So while many of my fellow panelists will share how AI is transforming healthcare operations, my team is really focused on that personal aspect and how AI can transform you. So in your work, how we're using it to elevate our careers. And it really starts with understanding how AI is a powerful tool, but it really relies on the prompts that you give it. The magic isn't just on the technology, it's how we ask the questions and then always ensuring that you validate that answer.
Excellent. I think, did we get all the intros done here this morning? I think so. Now, as you're listening to the experts today, feel free to drop your comments into the chat box and use the QA box to ask us anything. We're going to have some prepared comments that we're going to chat with together, and then we're going to spend time answering your questions and doing follow-up. So I guess now what I say is, in the same order, can each of our speakers talk a bit about something amazing or terrible that happened when you're using AI? What did you learn from the experience? And also, what are some moonshots, potentially really ambitious challenges that you'd like to solve? And I did note, as we were talking about this last week, getting together as a team, there's about a 30% lack of people to do this job in the world right now, is my understanding, in North America. And there are people that say there's 30% efficiencies with AI. By the way, that's a good as number as any. So that's something that we might want to talk about. So let's go back around the circle and talk about the good, the bad, maybe the ugly. Okay.
All right. My good is actually so great for the folks in Wisconsin. I am a UWM grad, both in my bachelor's and I'm in the middle of my MBA, EMBA with UWM, and they have a fantastic partnership with Microsoft due to the fact that their president received his master's degree at UWM. So he came back, gave back to the school, and stood up one of 5 co-innovation labs in the world at UWM in the West Wing of the Golda Meir Library. It is fantastic. I had the opportunity to go in person and receive personal instruction from the engineers who wrote Copilot. I learned quite a bit from them, just having that personalized access to the engineers. It's a fantastic tool. It has a lot of promise. The engineers wrote it for not just anyone in healthcare, but for everyone to be able to use it as a, kind of a force multiplier. Their number one goal in writing the AI or programming the AI is for it to be helpful. And doesn't that sound wonderful? But what it really means is that, in order for it to be as helpful as it can, the prompts need to be structured in a certain way and give the AI enough to give you what you need. I guess my good and my bad came, last Monday night when I was there because they let us just go, try and prompt the AI for something. And what it brought back that very first time with no structure around it was goofy and just not at all what I was looking for. But as, they taught a little bit more about the prompting, it was fantastic. And, asking it to bring back the source for you to then go find more information about was key and extremely helpful. So, I think AI has the ability to be a great help, a capacity expander for HIM teams, but I do think it's always going to be need a human touch.
So it can be amazing, but learning prompting is certainly one of the first skills we all have to do, and that's experimentation and failure in small groups. Hopefully failure with things that don't matter before we get to things that do matter. Thank you, Jill. Who's next? Go ahead and jump in, just in the order we ended intros. So.
Hey, this is Casey. I don't have an actual personal story about what happened to me while using AI, but I do agree with Jill's point that it is necessary for us to learn how to prompt it correctly, and it does have the ability to make amazing transformations within the healthcare space. But I do have a moonshot, and I would like to see a patient-centric documentation loop. This AI would not only support our coders and our clinical documentation improvement specialists, but it will also create a patient-friendly explanation of how their health records, their diagnoses, and procedures affect their care and their billing. So this will increase our patients' trust in us as a healthcare system. It fosters better engagement with our care plans, and it improves billing transparency. So there are no surprise bills, and patients will be able to better understand what they're being billed and how our payments are structured. So that's my little moonshot or take.
Casey, that's a great moonshot. And I would say that in the world of AI, we talk about chatbots and we talk about agents. And agents, by the way, are pieces of code that have some ability to work independently, hopefully with human supervision. But we could imagine an agent that might be someone that you could chat with on the phone or on a website or in some way to say what's going on and then get an explanation in sort of plain English. Is that what you're thinking about, Casey? Or
Oh, yes, sir, definitely. Just a plain English understanding. And sometimes I don't check my iris until 6:30, 7:30 in the evenings, and there's no one to call at the clinic to say, "Hey, what is this surprise bill?" So I can it'll definitely help me better understand the billing process and what I need to pay as the patient.
Excellent. And Beth, what are your thoughts? Let's dive
Yes.
a little bit deeper.
I have a story to share about a stunning moment that I had when I first met with our data scientist team. So we hired a bunch of data scientists and a team to support them, and they asked me what my wish was. And I told them that from a compliance perspective, my wish was that we could use AI to help me and my team to identify where we have risks across the health system. Because right now, that looks like looking at the Office of the Inspector General work plan and seeing if we should be doing audits based on what they're looking for, looking at state data and benchmarking to see if we look like we're overcoding or undercoding. So they were turned loose and they came back to me with the most stunning thing that I think I've seen in 20 years of my career. And that was essentially what was a major audit plan that covered the entire company, from billing, coding, revenue cycle, patient, what was I going to say there? Finance. It covered the entire health system. They had examples of where I should go looking for potential compliance issues. And what I learned from that is that you have to be careful about what you ask for, because once I had that document in hand, I had an obligation to go do audits in every single one of those areas. So we've learned to work a little bit differently. So we're planning things together, but it's just completely amazing. I just can't even explain how much that transforms our work. My moonshot is right now we're using ambient listening in our primary care offices. And what that really means is there's an I don't know, it's the AI person in the room. Bob, you'll tell me whether this is an agent or what it is. But it's in the room listening to the conversation between the doctor and the patient. The doctor doesn't have to touch their keyboard anymore because the AI is transcribing everything, including the patient's view of that encounter. So it's a much richer kind of experience for the doctor and the patient. The doctors feel like they can focus on the patient, look them in the eye in a way that they haven't been able to in years. So the moonshot for me is that would happen. The documentation's available. We have AI doing the coding and clinical documentation improvement in the background. And then you have coding and HIM experts and CDI experts as auditors on the background, the humans looking at what that whole entire process and cycle looks like in the end to make sure that it's sound, it's ethical, that there's nothing that we didn't expect happening there. And then finally, sort of to Casey's point, when the patient comes in the next time, the only thing that gets presented to the doctor and the nurses and the care team is what really matters from years of documentation on this patient in a predictive way, just serving up what really matters.
That is amazing, Beth. And one thing I will say, I work with a lot of friends across the AI space in a lot of different industries, and word for word transcription and recording is something that we think very carefully about in the AI space, because remember that LLMs, so large language models, try to appear to be intelligent, and also, by the way, they appear to be delightful, and they sometimes make things up. We call that hallucination. So it is interesting when we're transcribing that the actual recorded transcription and what the either agent or chatbot, depending on if it has permissions, right, or autonomy, sometimes comes up with things that didn't actually happen. So it's an interesting thing when we think about compliance and oversight and human in the loop. That's a really interesting topic. So let's keep thinking about that one. Who's next? Let's jump in.
Hi, it's Rochelle again. I would say I've had a good and a bad. I'll start with the bad first and then on the good note. So, when implementing automation and trying to stand up our technology, we had done our data mining that we thought we needed to do for the new technology to come into place, and we inadvertently missed a sister hospital where a lot of our providers frequently go in, do radiology tests, come back over to our hospital, and the professional coding is all done in-house. And one of the key pieces that we missed was we would not be able to interface with this particular hospital because they weren't on the same instance of our EMR. So I would say, if you're going into the tech space, one thing that I think we could have done better is to understand the volume that was coming in from that local hospital and make sure that we had worked with them. Fortunately, they were willing to work with us and we stood up, what we needed to then interface. On the converse side of good, one thing that we have been working on is AI. And that AI tool is actually reading all of the physician documentation and then identifying where we might have gaps in coding. I think this is phenomenal and it's really paving the way for, not just heads down coding every day, but maybe bringing us back to where we have gaps. So that is definitely exciting in this space.
Yeah. So Rochelle, the human in the loop, both the skills of the humans who do coding and compliance, as Beth was talking about, and oversight, to Casey's point, garbage in, garbage out, right? Those things don't change just because we have tools that, by the way, the feature is the bug with artificial intelligence. It looks good. I don't know if you've all seen the demonstrations of code where you can do a dashboard in seconds or minutes, but we don't know if it's good because we still need humans to evaluate what the quality standard is. So I'll remind us of that. So who's next? Next thoughts.
That is me. So first off, no judging. I'm a big TikToker. So 3 years ago, I had stumbled on a TikTok video about ChatGPT, and I was working in higher ed at the time, and we had a professional development day. And I came back and I said, have you guys seen this ChatGPT thing? And I had every faculty member around my desk, and we were putting things in, and we were like, oh, we're in trouble. So our IT instructors put his entire curriculum into ChatGPT and got an A- immediately. So from a higher ed perspective, we quickly learned we had to learn how to rewrite or redo our curriculum. And I think the scariest thing, I love AI, I use it all the time. But the thing that I worry about from that higher ed perspective and those new emerging professionals entering the industry that are relying on AI to answer some of their coding questions and not knowing how to use their code book, which you can't pass an exam if you don't know how to use your actual physical book. So we see a lot of them trying to find answers in ChatGPT. And I had a coworker who gave the analogy, it's like you pay all this money for school. So it's like you're at the grocery store and you're shopping and you're buying all the things and you're clipping the coupons and then you go and pay and just leave your groceries there. So really stressing how to use technology when it's appropriate, and then really knowing how to go old school and use your book to get you that job and to get you those credentials.
Yeah, and it is interesting that ChatGPT got 100 million active users in just the space of 2 months, and there are lots of there's lots of data points about that. That's the fastest of any consumer service on the planet, faster than Facebook or anybody else. And Julie, just to drill down a little bit in that, I work with universities in a mentorship capacity in the US and in Europe and in Asia. And I noticed that college professors are really having a struggle to figure out how to change their curriculum. Have you thought about how curriculums would change for how we do coders and figure out how coders can be kind of at the top of their game and use the tools, but don't rely on them to be accurate without human check? What's your thought on that?
What I had started doing was because I'm like, it's the big elephant in the room and we're all eating the elephant. So I wasn't going to shy away from it. So what I had started doing was show me what ChatGPT gives you for a code based on this coding scenario. And now what does your book show you? And what are the differences and where do you think that there's that gap in there? So really making them do a checks and balance versus what AI is offered versus what really needs to be doing. And just kind of a way to show them that, again, it's a tool. I used to always say, like, even in coding, we have an encoder that helps us find our codes. And I tell students, the encoder is kind of like your boyfriend. He's fun, he's cool to hang around with, but your book is your Bible. It is your husband. He knows what's going on. So always, when in doubt, go back to your book. But again, I do love AI. I do love it in its place.
That's wonderful. Good. Now, I want to make sure we take some, and have we all kind of had a chance to give our first kind of impression of AI? We've all got our intro kind of done here. Yeah. Okay. So I guess Leslie, maybe if you have questions in the chat, I want to go through some of the questions that we have for the panel here. And I did see a first one here. How is AI able to apply CMS guidelines and a CDIS? Where do you go to do training? Okay. Maybe start with you, Julie, because you're on the screen here and we've talked a little bit about this already. So
And again, I think it's, there's computer assisted coding, and, like Rochelle and everyone's talking about, it's a great tool, but at the end of the day, it needs that human touch. So it may show you things such as, oh, that's a heart failure. Do you want to pick up that code? But as you read all the documentation, it's an acute heart failure. So it's just really getting that specificity. But I think for training for CDS, CDI, CDS, there's so many courses through Actus. There's some through AHIMA that are offering it. Again, I think AI is just going to change our landscape. Our work isn't going to go away. It's just going to change how we do our work.
other thoughts from the panelists? Beth, I think, did you have a thought? Oh, I think you're on mute, Beth.
There we go. Thank you. Back to the question about how is AI able to apply CMS guidelines. There are, that's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they govern a lot of how we operate hospitals, for example, and other parts of healthcare. But there are some technologies out there, and Wellstar is actually working on one right now, where the idea is that if I'm a nurse, I have a lot of CMS guidelines that I need to know, like nurse to patient ratios is one of my favorites. And so these tools are being developed to, again, serve up to the nurse just the things that they need to know related on their role and responsibilities that are coming out of CMS. If I'm a coder and there are billing guidelines and everything Julie's talking about, there's rules around all of that. So if I'm a coder, it's going to serve up to me at different intervals while I do my work, just the CMS guidelines that relate to my job. So I'm very excited about that because there's so much, as everyone knows, healthcare is so heavily regulated that just giving people the components that they really need, I think, will be transformative.
And any more comments before we go on to the next question? Well, so there is kind of a related question in the chat. Will coders and auditors need to learn prompt engineering alongside traditional skills? Let me take a shot at that one. And I would start with something that I say a lot at General Motors. I'm probably 5 minutes ahead of some folks and 5 minutes behind others. And anything that you say about artificial intelligence today, I think it's Tuesday, I'm pretty sure of that, probably won't be true by next Tuesday. So I've never in my life in technology, and I've been doing this for a while, seen technology move so quickly or such a feature-rich battle between really competent organizations. So I'll give you an example. 6 months ago, a person who I'm a big fan of, Deb Black over at Netflix, actually probably about a year ago, posted something called a prompt engineer. And that is a position that pays at Netflix between $100,000 and $900,000. And lots of people said, wow, prompt engineer, it seems like that's what I want tell my kids to do. Today, most of the technology companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, sort of all the big folks, when you ask a question in their chat interface, you'll notice that they then say, hey, based on what we just talked about, here's some other prompts that might be good prompts to try. By the way, that's called in context or in memory prompting. You started to see that across industries. And so if you think about what you would expect to see in the medical coding industry, I would expect that your suppliers, vendors, EMR, all the folks that you work with now are going to start giving you sample prompts and ways to kind of think about what you might do next in context with the conversation that you're in. It's called the memory context or the context window. Hope that makes sense, right? The other thing I would say is we're going to give tips. All of us are going to give some tips sort of to leave you with. One of the tips I have is I use a lot of different tools, but the tool that I use every morning, I was using it as I was driving over by voice, because I'm all about safety here at General Motors, is a tool called Perplexity Pro. So any tool that you use, if you don't pay for the tool, you are the product, meaning your data and your queries are going to be used to train that tool. Just like when you do a Google search, if you don't pay Google, which you don't, they're going to use your data. So remember that Perplexity Pro, any paid for software, you want to make sure that you're using something that doesn't take your information and share it with other people or train it with other people. And Perplexity Pro, I'm a huge fan of because of how they have built their product. So, and I have from Debbie Stewart, we're looking at AI software for coding outpatient diagnostics and EDEM levels. Quick thoughts from the panelists on that. You've probably already been doing some of those investigations. What are your thoughts so far? Where is it progressing? And
Yeah.
I'll start with Beth. Beth is on the screen here. So
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Debbie, I think that, on the inpatient side, the AI software has, I guess, different generations of it have been around for a while. I am really excited to see the new software tools on the outpatient side. It's just been there have been pockets of outpatient like radiology that this technology has been available forever, but my team and I have been looking very carefully at the outpatient tools, so I think this is a great time to go for that.
Great.
Yeah.
And Rochelle, what are your thoughts on that?
Go do it. And I can say that with assurance because we've installed several different specialties within AI. They code on the weekends. They code on holidays, where normally during my Christmas breaks, I would have to have coders on mandatory overtime just to manage volumes because our ED volumes explode during the holidays. It's inevitable. So, if you're thinking about it, go out and do it because your volumes are going to continue to grow. We put it in over a year and a half ago and never looked back. We are only hopeful that there's more to come.
Excellent. And I would say with all the advice we're giving, could I just always insert this one piece of advice? Humans are important in the world. We love you. We think humans are great. And by the way, the reason that we've hired you in whatever role you're in is because we want your insight and your experience and your decision-making ability. So there always should be a human in the loop. There should always be a human that is moderating decisions. There should never be direct diagnosis or other recommendations that don't have oversight with the appropriate oversight process that you already have built in, and as Beth talked a little bit about. So, and then directly for Jill, will AI enable a model where denials are self-resolving, i.e. instant data-driven appeals? Do you feel comfortable talking about that, Jill, a little bit?
Yes, and I mean, there are tools today that already structure those queries. They already structure those appeals. But the important part is to have the human review it and make sure that it makes sense. Again, the AI tools really become, a capacity multiplier, meaning that like you don't have to start from scratch and, adjudicate from zero. It's already brought the pertinent information to you. You know, because you have the education, training, and experience to go through and very quickly, yes, this makes sense, let's send, or ho, 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 that makes no sense at all. And go back, and the changes that you make, the AI should learn from them. And the next thing that it tees up to you should make more sense. So it should get faster and faster. But at this point, I don't think it's ever going to completely be 100% automatic resolve and it just passes through everyone and a human never touches it. But in these beginning stages, it is I think it's more necessary than potentially the future. One thing that the Microsoft AI engineers did tell me, when I was there, was that even they don't know what AI is capable of, and they're the people who are writing it. So
We know that it will never get worse than it is today, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. It'll just be different. So I want to do a little bit of a topic switch because we have a lot of things in the chat around the topic of accuracy. And I'd like to point out as a data scientist that I've been working in data science specifically around cancer research and diagnosis and algorithm with Watson and with GE Healthcare and others, both as a two-time cancer survivor and someone very committed to diagnostics. Most data science, most of the work of data science, about 80% of it, is in how we get the data collected and cleaned and ready, as you all know. You know, from a medical coding point of view, that there's a lot of jokes we can insert here about doctors and their handwriting, okay? And we all know that there's issues with transcription. So there is something that I put in the chat called retrieval augmented generation, RAG, and retrieval augmented generation really is a set of documents or pictures or files or other data that we collect sometimes on a website, sometimes somewhere else. And then we ask the LLM and the different artificial intelligence software to look at this as a way to identify how to more precisely answer questions. This is an important topic. You'll hear lots of your vendors will be talking to you about RAG. We have a joke with our team at General Motors that we often hear about Frankenstein RAG. Everybody just goes, well, I had some documents and we put them together and it was good. This is across the industry. Remember that LLMs, typically large language models, are very good at processing text. They're not as good at processing pictures or Excel spreadsheets. So if you think about tabular data, and a lot of the documents that we have in the world are PowerPoints and Word files and Excel files. And so remember that the quality of your data, the quality of your software, and the quality of your oversight together are important for what you're going to actually get out. And so remember that a big part of the conversation should be, what's our current baseline? How do we measure improvement? How do we know that it is good? Because remember that it can look good but not be good. So that's a key question for humans and measurement. So do we have any thoughts with the panelists of maybe some bad experiences that you had using AI where you thought you were getting the right answer and you got the wrong answer, the wrong diagnosis, or the wrong sort of cost codes? Any thoughts about that? Maybe just go around the table here.
well, sort of to Julie's point, my first, forays into using AI, let me see what it'll bring back for me. And, just give me I don't know, a one view chest X-ray. I'm making that up. I really don't remember what it was, but what it brought back to me, I'm like, that does not look right. So then you go to your book, you go to, Codify or whatever you have, and it's like, oh, look, that code was retired in 1992. It can bring you back some not good information. And that's why it's so important to, verify, tell the AI in your prompt, bring me a source. So then you can, click through and make sure that the source is relevant. It's actually correct. It's not, Jill's coding book, it's the APC, it's AMA, it's something, an industry standard. So that's, that was I don't know if that's a horrible experience, but it certainly was eye-opening.
And just a
Other
quick note
thoughts?
on that,
Yeah.
I've seen this many times since the inception of these large language models and their proliferation. 9 out of 10 references, or perhaps maybe that ratio is down now, maybe it's 7 out of 10. But those sources that you mentioned there, Jill, references, we call them bibliography or citations, those are not good right now. That's a major weakness. And so just certainly approach with caution, specifically when it comes to citations.
Yeah, there is something that I would encourage people to consider. The reason I choose Perplexity as my kind of go-to to start the morning is I might have a question. I'm working on a project with a customer, and we're interested in a regulated industry. Automotive is pretty heavily regulated. We care a lot about safety. So you want to think about what's called hallucination, or it's also called heat, right? Is it a cool or is it a hot model? And without going into all the technical things, you're looking for something like perplexity that will give you its results. It'll show you how it got those results. It'll show you the thinking, then it'll show you the sources. And if you don't have those three things, you shouldn't trust the model for things that really matter, which I think most of us want to do things that matter, right? That can be used in our business. And so, but there are models that have wild hallucination that are creative. If you ask it to write poetry about, um, hospitals, I guess you wouldn't care. But if it's about billing or other things that matter. So, and
Bob,
then for
you kind of
Casey,
Bob, you kind of touched on it too earlier, and I think it's a good point to kind of bring back is when you're using those free versions and you're inputting data that you're giving them that information, you're helping to build them. And I went to a big seminar, and it was when I was in higher ed, and I was noticing my students went from a discussion post that was 2 lines long to 4 paragraphs, and I was like, I know you didn't write that. And I could put it in the chat GPT and I could say, did you write this? And that's when I learned I just gave them student work. And there's FERPA, which is like HIPAA in schools, and I'm giving them all that work. And I remember leaning over and looking at the president of the school going, I do that. So I will stop, but it's good to know that we're giving them information when you're using those free sources.
absolutely. And for Casey, we have a question, which is, at what point does denial prevention become denial prediction? And is that a compliant risk? And remember that you can train a model. We have a model that my wife and I have at our house that only gives wrong answers, because I think it's very funny. My wife and I are both geeks, and clearly we have too much free time. But if you train a model with bad data, to Casey's point, it will give you the wrong answer consistently, right? It'll look a little different because remember, it is a generative model, so it's going to generate a new answer each time. That's a feature. That's also a bug, right? If you're looking for the same result. So Casey, you want to take a shot at that?
Absolutely. That is a great question, Bob. And one thing we need to keep in mind is that as AI matures, denial prevention is about strengthening our documentation and coding on the front end. Prediction takes it a step further, and it uses our historical data to anticipate denials before they happen. The risk comes in is when our predictions start to influence the documentation behavior in ways that prioritize our reimbursement over clinical accuracy. And in order to stay compliant, we need to ensure that these tools are used to inform education and review, not to steer outcomes. There is a fine line there, and governance in this area is very critical.
Great. Other thoughts on that? Because I know if we've all seen the precog from the movies, remember those 3 folks that were looking, they were called pre-crime models? We got to be very careful that we don't do the same thing with medical coding, because we could teach a model to look at every possible code and then maximize the ability to bill. And by the way, I'm not an expert on medical coding, but I do know that that would be a compliance and regulation issue, right? So, Beth, do you have thoughts on that?
I just want to thank Casey for her comments. I just could not agree more. And a lot of people are trying to do good things with AI, and a lot of people in healthcare don't know billing and coding rules, and they are very frustrated sometimes. Some clinicians sometimes are very frustrated that we're not going back from 3 admissions ago to pull forward something that could be relevant in a current admission, and it's just such a huge compliance risk. So I just wanted to put a punctuation mark on what Casey said.
It seems like there's some other feelings about this. Other panelists want to talk about this. It seems like this be a pretty important topic. So,
Well,
we
I
good?
think that the AI all works together, right? I mean, for everything that's available. So the ambient listening, that's a big deal. The physicians that I've spoken with that have ambient listening in their practices are thrilled with it, because what it gives them back is their time. So instead of, when their kids are at their feet and they're still on the computer at home, they don't have to do that anymore. The ambient listening has really, shortened their day, and they can actually have somewhat of a life. How they sit, but they sign off on everything. Just as a, by the way, every physician that I've spoken with, they review every note. Yes, this is correct and accurate. One thing that I have heard from them is that the ambient listening picks up on things. Oh yeah, I forgot I said that. Or, oh yeah, I forgot I did that. So it is helping, I think, improve the accuracy, to Casey's point. I also know, I also know physicians, close your ears, Beth, that are just like, well, can't we push the envelope? Can't we do, no, you just document what you did, please? And we'll go with that. So you just never know where it is going to go, and where the humans and the AI process are going to take it.
Thanks. And
Excellent.
also to Jill's point about ambient listening, giving back physicians their time. That's our ultimate goal, is to make our providers have that healthy work-life balance. And in using AI, if it augments their day, augments their processes, and gives them back their day, that's perfectly great. And I'm reminded of a vendor out there, coding vendor, that they have the software that reads through their documentation and also gives them nudges to say, hey, you documented this, and this kind of fits this diagnosis or this clinical process. Is this true? Is this false? And then it can add that to the documentation as well. And so it actually helps our coders and CDI on the back end. If our physicians are getting nudges to improve their documentation, that means we send less queries. That means there's less queries they have to read and answer, and that also gives them back a portion of their time during their day. Because let's just say, I know some physicians and queries are not their best friends, so that would also help them out tremendously.
And Beth, do you have a thought there too?
Yeah, just quickly. So when we implemented ambient listening, to everyone's points, we had our coding auditors audit documentation for doctors. So they would look at their records prior to the ambient listening and look at the records and the documentation afterwards, so that we started to get an assurance that we're not, over documenting to some of the earlier points. I'm knocking on wood here because you never know, but it's just a suggestion to auditors.
And let me combine the kind of two. I've got a question about how, in the automotive space, where we consider safety very, very important. We want all of our customers to arrive alive and safe every time. We're very thoughtful about recording, and I think it's important when we talk about things like ambient listening. There is one-party consent and there's two-party consent. I don't know how many of us have been in a meeting in the last 7 or 10 days where, when we joined the meeting, automatically the recording bot showed up. I was at a meeting a couple days ago, for Rotary International, where there were 5 people in the meeting and there were 6 bots recording. And the only thing we did in the meeting is canceled the meeting. We all got notifications from 6 different companies about nothing that happened in that meeting, which is kind of a waste of oxygen. But be very cautious, because remember, to Casey's point, very first point, garbage in, garbage out, and human in the loop. We don't normally in meetings record every single meeting. That's not, by the way, a best practice from a compliance point of view. There's a lot of meetings that shouldn't be recorded. They shouldn't be discoverable because they're private HR or other matters that should be off the record by design. So I think, to Beth's point, she said there was a 360 audit plan from her data science team across the whole company. That's a good place to start. What does it mean to be compliant, to do the right thing, to use ethical AI everywhere? Write that plan and work through that plan first before you start implementing agents and bots and chatbots and all those things, because technology is technology, but how humans relate to each other, that's the most important thing in the care scenario and in life. And we want to make sure that we do the policy before production, right? That really matters. So, where would you start? What's a good beginner step to start? I'm going to go to each of the panelists. This is sort of also maybe the one tip that you'd say, if you're going to go, you're going to leave this webinar and you're going to go do 1 or 2 things. What are those 1 or 2 things to get your feet wet, but not in a dangerous way? And Beth, you're on the you're on the screen. Let's start with you.
Thanks. So I think what we're doing today is a really good start. I would absolutely go out and listen to as many speakers as you can, attend some conferences where you can see the technology up front. I also would recommend, as you start looking at the technologies, to early on ask to talk to existing clients so you can hear from people who have been in the work for a while. Those would be my thoughts.
Very good. And Jill, what about you? What'd be your first or second thing that you do today?
So, I mean, personally, I think getting comfortable with, the prompting, practicing that, with a subject that you know well and you know the truth. So when you're prompting it and it's giving you something that looks wackadoo, you know that it's wackadoo, and can improve your prompting insofar as how to, implement it at your practice or your hospital or whatnot. Definitely, to Beth's point, talk to your peers. Who do you respect? Who's using it now? What are their real results? Because they can absolutely be your canary in the coal mine and tell you what to look for, and that they let them go through all that bad stuff, and you can just get good stuff.
Yep. Let's see. So, Casey?
One thing that I'm going to do on Monday, after this webinar, I'm going to explore ways with my colleagues to ethically and responsibly implement some AI into our denials and appeals processes. Maybe start by looking at giving it some red flags like, hey, this is a sepsis case, or this is a respiratory failure case, this is a malnutrition. Comb this documentation, comb this data, and tell me, or is this valid? Did this patient really have sepsis? And I know there's a debate, sepsis 2 versus sepsis 3, and it's dependent upon the payer. But I just want to, and it starts with the front end. It starts on the front end with their documentation. And I wanted to help us point out some of the areas that we can educate our physicians to say, hey, look, you're documenting this, and we don't need you to document that, but to make it clearer to our payers and to our coders, maybe you should try this language, or saying it this way instead of that way. It's not giving them personal nudges, I should say, instead of sending out queries left and right. We can actually just sit them down and talk to them. And so this will actually point us in the right direction. So
Learning, mentorship, learning from each other. Rochelle, what would be the first thing you'd do after this webinar?
Yeah, I might answer the question that was in the chat, and I think it's to first know what areas you're struggling with. So identify those areas that you may need to put technology in, and then partner with your IS department. So they are the catalyst to ensuring that any technology, and we did that. We partnered very closely to determine what is the best solution for us, because there are many different versions out there. Some take a huge lift on the IS side. Some, are a little bit easier to implement. So, for this group, I would say that's where to start. For me, on Monday, to keep exploring, this group of panelists has expert knowledge. And I think that, sitting down and doing more reviews, more aggregate auditing, and identifying where we have opportunities is certainly the next step.
Excellent. And Julie, I think I know what you might do. We talked a little bit about it. Julie, what would you do first thing?
Well, Bob and I spoke, was it last week? And then he gave me all these YouTube channels and all these articles, and I've been nerding out ever since. But I think one of the biggest takeaways for me has been, I've been in this AI space for years, and I thought I was doing a really great job, but my prompts were never really robust enough. So really giving all that context in your prompts. And then I found it helpful to say, ask me 5 questions. What am I missing in this? So it could help me build off of that with the additional information that it needs. So, and then I give you some ideas in there. But yeah, anything AI, and Bob has some really great resources. So again, thank you, Bob, for meeting with me, because I've talked nonstop about it since.
Well, and one thing that Julie shared with me is that Julie has been in a mentorship relationship with folks that we're trying to bring into the profession. I'm not, you all are. And the question is, how do we hire new coders? So I would say I would probably go to, I spend time at my Starbucks at Central Washington University in Ellensburg, Washington, where I hang out. And I learn from the college students all the time. So sometimes I buy them a cup of coffee. Usually it's a medium because I'm not a rich man, and just talk to them about how they're using AI tools and what they're learning. And by the way, um, people that are digital natives are naturally going to be using all of these tools just kind of as kind of a second sight. And when you start talking with them, that'd be the first thing I would do. If you don't have access to a group of college students who are sort of tech savvy, they don't have to be computer kids, students, just anybody. I would go to Lenny's newsletter. Lenny is a wonderful human who I'm a big fan of, has about 1 million subscribers. And we're going to put in the chat. There is an offer, by the way. I have no dog in this fight and no compensation for me. Lenny has a newsletter that if you subscribe for, I think it's 350 or 375 a year, you get 14 subscriptions that are annual subscriptions to all of the coolest AI tools. They're things I use every single day, most of them, and he's curated them. Plus, he has a podcast that I listen to as a required podcast every single day. I listen to Lenny's because he is the latest and greatest in what's going on, real stuff in the last 24 hours, which is in AI a big deal. So, other thoughts, other questions that we have here? Let's see here. I'm just seeing. Getting kind of ready to wrap up, I think. Is that right, Leslie? We're getting kind of to that transition.
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes left. So anyone have any questions, or any of the panelists have anything to add for a takeaway? We've got a little bit of time.
I guess I would just toss it to you. So both to Andrew and to Katie, the organization that is hosting this webinar is new to me because I know Andrew because Andrew is a wonderful AI person that we've spent a lot of time as friends. But can you explain to me how people might come and benefit from this organization doing some of that training that you talked about or other things? How can they come in and learn more? Because this seems like a really good event to me. So
Certainly. Well, thank you for that, Bob. I appreciate it very much. Essentially, the majority of large facilities and healthcare systems are accustomed to, generally for reasons that we can get into later, but they're accustomed to, partnering with RCM vendors in some capacity and somehow, some way. Oftentimes, those, again, being in a heavily regulated industry, those partnerships are long-standing, they're heavily vetted, they're highly competitive, and so Elevate happens to be a leader in terms of the outsourcing of RCM services, right? And so when it comes to mid-cycle, we could either advise on or actually deliver heads down production coding services to the mid-cycle. When it comes to ARM, if you're on the tail end of the revenue cycle, our parent company happens to be a accounts receivable management company, right? And so that again would be another area. And from a regulatory perspective, again, we'll say any third-party motion must be truly third party, and so that's kind of the raison d'être, if you will. So I would also like to add, I have had that cup of coffee with you, Bob, in Ellensburg, Washington, and encourage all of the panelists and all attendees to look him up indeed, because you will learn a lot. So over many projects and many years, Bob, thank you so much for your leadership here in today's panel. I'm profoundly impacted by the scope of contribution here today. I was actually just asking Perplexity here in my other monitor, how many facilities or care centers are represented in today's panel? And that number is huge. Seems to be anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 care centers of some kind, outpatient facilities, hospitals, whatever. If we add up everybody and all of our scope, some numbers could even be between 4,000 and 5,000 care sites. So think about the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of patients who this group impacts. And then scale that and make one more jump and say, wow, this is actually a very small group that impacts a very large contingent. So with that, Elevate Medical Solutions is here to advise, we're here to grow together, and we're certainly here to provide that outsource, heads down production service offering. So back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Leslie, for getting us all organized. Thanks to all the panelists. Most importantly, thanks to Elevate for sponsoring this, and to all of the attendees. We'll have some resources to come out after the event. I would say trust but verify. AI looks like the universal cheat code. It looks like the easy button. It turns out it hasn't replaced humans, still garbage in, garbage out. And great data science requires great data, great science, and humans to curate that experience. So be safe, please arrive home. And if you haven't yet, go drive a GMC vehicle. They're pretty awesome. I'm doing my entire session here in my EV with 500 miles of range. So I think I get a little commercial advertisement in here. Thanks all. Really appreciate your
Thank
time and
you.
your attention. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.